Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, our beloved Guru Deva, Paramahansa Yoganandaji, saints of all religions, dear friend and guide, Swami Kriyanandaji, we humbly bow before you all. Divine Mother, great masters, we come to you with hearts wide open. Help us to feel your love always and to be able to use it as a pole star in our lives, drawing ourselves ever closer to thee, knowing that until we are one with thee, until we know with total certainty that there is only joy in thee, we could never find true happiness. We are thine. Help us to find our way home to thee. Om. Peace. Amen.
In this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, they do not know how to love me. In this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, they do not know how to love me. Where is their pure, loving love? Where is their truly loving thee? There my soul longs to be, there my
Let's meditate together now for a few minutes, holding the lines of this chant where there's pure love, where there's truly loving me, there our souls long to be. As we hold that thought, that energy, that truth at the point between the eyebrows, and we'll meditate together now for just a few minutes. Oh, peace. Amen.
Long I've called you, my Lord, long I've called you. Many years I have longed for your sight. Bathe the darkness with tears of devotion, offered candles in prayer to your light. How much longer, friend, must I cry your name? I am yours, ever yours. Will you come? Long I've called you, my Lord, long I've called you. Many years I have longed for your sight. Bathe the darkness with tears of devotion, offered candles in prayer to your light. How much longer, friend, must I cry your name? I am yours, ever yours. Will you come? Long I've called you, my Lord, long I've called you. Many years I have longed for your sight. Bathe the darkness with tears of devotion, offered candles in prayer to your light. How much longer, friend, must I cry your name? I am yours, ever yours.
That song is so beautiful. Thank you, Keshava. I think Keshava's already gone. And Sai Ganesh. It's very, very lovely. The miracle of that song tonight, as if it's not a miracle in and of itself, the name of that song is Cloisters. And I've been listening to that song for many, many years, listening to it and singing it. And I just realized tonight as I was listening to them sing that it is exactly a song that would be sung in a cloistered environment. It just felt, there's such a pure longing in that song. But about 10 minutes before that song, literally we were just about to go live, Keshava remembered he was supposed to be leading a kirtan tonight. And he was not there leading the kirtan, he was here waiting to sing with Sai Ganesh. And I was just wondering, as in a wonder, not thinking, but just sitting in wonder that that could have happened, that I just remembered I'm supposed to be leading a kirtan live. And then to come to that point of such utter beauty and such a beautiful yearning for God, and just how, like the song says, many years I've longed, but many lifetimes that we long. Beautiful. The reading tonight from Secrets of Emotional Healing is the secret of overcoming dependence on others. And Swamiji says, is to reflect. Can a person gain anything from anyone that doesn't resonate with something he already possesses in himself? So can a person really gain anything from anyone that doesn't already resonate with something he possesses in himself? Live more from within, Swamiji says. From that center, radiate your own special strength and courage to all. It's an interesting reading. It's not as, the reading isn't as obvious. What does that mean? Something that we already possess in ourselves, and that we have to find that place of resonance with anything outside of ourselves that resonates with that, or we won't gain anything. I had to read this a few times, actually. Once you see it, it's so obvious, but it's not obvious to begin with. Swamiji has an interesting line in the beginning of one of his chapters in a book called Promise of Immortality, which is a book that many of us just studied a little more in depth than we usually do when we just read it in a book study last year, I believe it was, recently. The teaching in that book is profound. It's actually challenging. I know my first few years on the path, I couldn't read it. People would say to me, read this before you give a Sunday sermon, because this is Swamiji's most in-depth study of the teachings he's trying to convey each Sunday. But I couldn't, it's not that I couldn't read it, of course I could read it. I just wasn't ready yet to get it. It wasn't that many years ago, which in some ways can be encouraging for all of us. We actually are making substantial progress on this path, because now I read the book and I think, what was so hard? But it's very deep, and I just wanted to read to you just the first couple of lines of this particular chapter. He says the soul's ascent can begin only after the discovery that happiness doesn't really come from things, from circumstances, or from other people. Once we accept this simple fact, and according to our depth of clarity in the acceptance, it's very important. As I always say, Swamiji doesn't waste any words, but I'm going to come back and explain this. So once we accept this simple fact, and in accordance, according to our depth of clarity in the acceptance, cease lamenting that matters ought to be other than they are, we take full responsibility for our happiness. Then we determine, of course, to work on ourselves and to quit trying to change the world. But before we move on there, I want to the sentence sounds simple, this one, because Swamiji is always telling us, and Master always told us, we have to look in, not out. But when he says here, the soul's ascent can only begin once we realize this, that's a very powerful line. Remember what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about dependence on others. We're talking about overcoming that dependence on others. And Swamiji says our spiritual growth and progress can only even really begin, he uses that word ascent, which I loved, once we accept that, and according to the degree of our acceptance and our understanding of the truth of that, do we begin to grow. It's the essence of the spiritual path. In a way, and I still feel this, I thought, there's not as much to say tonight, just literally to say to the point of the teaching, as there often is, because the first line is the simple truth. We need to know that nothing and no one can make us happy if we're unhappy, or unhappy if we're happy. It's a beautiful line. It's one of the first lines in a little book in the Yogananda series called How to Be Happy All the Time. I mean, very cleverly, Anandi placed that. It's not quite first, but it's close, because it's the essence of the path. Our happiness not only resides within, but it resides within because that is where that spark of the divine is. And as Swamiji said in this reading, it's only when we find places that are resonant with what already exists within us that we can move away from. That's the only place that we're going to be able to resonate and find true growth. We can't find anything to relate to outside, really, in truth, if it doesn't already resonate with something that's within us. And of course, what is within us, right at our very core, is that same spark of divine that we would want to connect with elsewhere. But again, to just let me go back here, Swamiji's saying we can't really start on our spiritual path until we at least begin to know this. Because then he says the degree to which we know it or accept it or will begin to realize it in our lives, make it the point from which we move forward, to that degree we'll be able to grow spiritually. The words here are deceptively simple. in a way. The teaching is actually very, very deep. And then he goes on to say in this chapter that self-reliance, and he very clearly says, make sure that you're writing that self with a capital S. So self-reliance, which means reliance on that within us that is divine, is essential. I just want to make sure I'm using his words. Very powerful first two paragraphs here. But it's essential for our spiritual development. Now, in a way, this sounds easy. In a way, it does. Because we say it so much. We hear it so often. Our next purchase in the world, our next relationship, it's just said so much. Our next anything is not what it is that's going to make us happy. And in fact, Swamiji has it as one of those emotions that we have to overcome, dependence on others. So we can feel the depth of it. But boy, it's subtle. It's just so unimaginably subtle. Just this morning, I was talking with a client of mine, and how can I say this? I've been listening to this story from her for a long time about her relationship and what's wrong with it. And sometimes I think that she's happy to just pay me, to be with me, to be able to continue over a long period of time, to have a place to take all of that angst. And in a way, that's okay with me. I mean, I'm helping her, I'm being a reflection for her, but she'll do what she wants. And we've had a very nice thing for many years. So I don't think it's a bad thing that's going on. But it's escalating. The trouble at home is escalating. It's so blatant. It's so obvious that the relationship is irreparable, that she can never have what she wants there. I really believe that's true. She won't get what she wants there. And yet, week after week, the way the mind works to try and get a new angle on this situation. I'm saying it because it's so obvious. If any of you or anybody was listening, they would see it. And this morning I was saying, wow, this is really something. The same story for years. And then I said to myself, what is it that you have gone through? This is while I'm in this meeting with her. Even in the last week, how many times have those much more subtle, but not really, I mean, there is much in the way. How many times in this past week have you found yourself imagining that if something was different, you'd be happier? That if you could stay away on vacation one more day, if you could have gone out for dinner while you were away on this vacation. I mean, I could go on and on. I thought it just keeps going. It's either very obvious or it's a fleeting thought, but it holds power. That if something were other than what it was, that we would be happier than we are. And it takes an enormous amount of introspection and energy, huge amount of energy, because what we're moving towards is a true reliance on, and in a way, dependence, we could use that word. It's not a bad word. Swamiji himself in this chapter many other places, says we want to be dependent on God. That's not the problem. But we don't want it to be a passive dependence. We don't want to think one day we'll wake up and God will be there for us. We have to be actively involved. We need to bring a lot of energy to this end point of depending only on the divine, only, because that's what's going to resonate in the deepest place. That's what's going to find our heartstrings and play them in that extraordinary melody of love. Really, melody of love. Isn't that the name of Bharat's book? Yeah, it's perfect. Of course it would be the name of Bharat's book, because that's what will happen. But it will only happen in that way. This is where trying to speak about this truth becomes very challenging, because we talk all the time about God's love, about opening our heart, about connecting in that place of love. But we can never really get it with words. We never will. It's an experience. We have to go there. We have to know it. We have to keep opening to it. This chant that Lakshmi chose for tonight, that is so beautiful. And interestingly, she and I were talking. She asked me yesterday or today, what do you think about this chant? And I said, it's perfect. But I said to her, a lot of people really dislike this chant. A lot of people find it to be they perceive it as being very sad, because the words are, in this world, Mother, no one can love me. In this world, no one knows how to love me. Where is there pure, loving love? Pure, loving love. Where is there truly loving me? There my soul longs to be. Where is there pure, loving love? Where is there truly loving me? There my soul longs to be. This is what is very hard for people to hear, is that we will not, no matter how much love we think we've known in this world, or known, how much love we've experienced. And I mean, I get to be up here talking, but I've been on the receiving end of a lot of love in my life, really a lot of love. I feel very blessed by how much people love me, care about me. But I know for sure that the quality of divine love transcends all of that. That any time that I want that human love, really good human love, to meet a deep need, when my heart is really longing to be loved, like that chant says. And I feel that at times. I think we all feel it, but we mistake it. We mistake it for something that's happening on the egoic, physical, material level. And then we go about looking to have it be satisfied. It might be silly to say, I would have enjoyed my trip more if I could eat out. But there were moments where I felt that, because for the past year, I've missed eating out. And I start realizing that I have cooked dinner every single day for a year. And I love to cook. But it's sort of like, oh, could I just go sit and have somebody serve me a delicious meal in a beautiful place. I would love that. I would. But it wasn't really going to affect the deepest place in me about my trip, not even at that level. Never mind where we're looking for complete, pure, loving, knowing of who we are. Most important, really knowing us and holding pure, loving space for that. We don't find it here. That is what Swamiji is talking about when he says, absolutely depend on God. Absolutely. But not just passively. Don't just feel we can wait for God to come. When I read this, I don't know why recently, very recently, in the last day or two, I was saying to somebody, I don't do the super conscious living exercises very often. You all know them, right? I am awake and ready. I am positive, energetic, enthusiastic. I used to love doing those, but I just don't do them that much anymore, ever, unless I'm teaching them. But when I read this, I was sitting here reading some words that Swamiji wrote, and he started talking about ignorance, meaning a not knowing that would lead us into darkness. This is all of the soul. So we're talking about a darkness of the soul when we're ignorant of the things that I'm talking about tonight. Again, these, in some ways, very simple truths, but he's talking about ignorance, and he says the way, you'll never find your way out of ignorance if you're lazy. It's interesting that he said that. He uses the word laziness, and it's not just in one place. I mean, he uses it a lot, but he says it darkens the mind. He's talking about a laziness of pursuing the divine is what he's talking about. But we have to practice that in many ways in the world. We cannot let ourselves be lazy. This is why all of these things in the world, not being forgetful of things that are important, being organized. This morning I was out for a walk, and I was walking up in the hills in and around the Stanford campus. And the people who own those homes, I imagine there are a lot of professors, but they take such exquisite care of their yards and their space. So it's beautiful walking there. I mean, we walk there because it's hilly, and we want that exercise. But I felt this morning, it's so calm being there. There's such calmness that you can tune into as you walk there. It's very different than looking at a lot of the stores on El Camino or many other places, or looking at places where people don't keep their yards neat and beautiful. People put energy in. And everywhere we look in the world, everything we participate in is a manifestation of where we are spiritually. And we can look at our lives and ask ourselves, how will that help me spiritually if I improve it? Or how would that improve as I grow spiritually? You can come at it from either direction, but I've often thought, this is important to what we're talking about, believe it or not. I'll make the connection in a minute. But I've often looked at people who just live in chaos or messes. Even my 7-year-old granddaughter, I talk with her every Friday. And I actually feel, today she was showing me around their house. And woo, there's a lot of stuff in that house. Now it's 2 people with 2 kids, and they've been confined for the year, but there are not like 2 books that are lined up or 2 toys that are stacked or just nowhere in the house. And then she takes me up to her room, which is where I usually talk to her. And of course, her room looks like the house. And I'm thinking to myself, really feeling, that's not good for her. I mean, I can just feel it. Even something as simple as that. Because we expand our energy and our places look like us. Our space looks like us. Our yards look like us. I mean, all of this, and when Swamiji's talking about ignorance and laziness, and he's saying that these things lead us away from a healthy dependence on God. And it sounds so silly, and it sounds, what's the word? I'm sorry. I'm losing a common word right now. But it sounds counter to what I'm saying, because I'm saying it has to be from the inside out. But in this instance, if we need help, if we want to start moving energy towards growing spiritually, sometimes it's very useful to start from the outside in, to just take a day or a few hours and straighten up a room or a space and see to what degree that brings not just calmness, but elevates your energy, because it's that same energy that we need to tap into and use for this transformation from dependence on the outside world to dependence on God. I hope that makes sense. I know it sounds inside out, but it's not, and it's right in tune where Swamiji is saying that we have to really find a personal commitment to what we want to become, that we have to bring huge energy. You remember a few weeks ago, there's 2 things a few talks ago, more than a few weeks ago. I think it was here, but if it wasn't, it doesn't matter. But I was sharing this concept that Swamiji has shared in many places, that when you run into a problem, the faster you can raise your energy to meet it and neutralize it, the more spiritual progress you make, because it requires more energy. So that was one thing. So the same thing's true here. When we want to quit being dependent on the outside world for our happiness and learn to depend on God alone, we have to raise our energy up. And we can do that, this is what I've just been talking about, in any number of ways. Get our energy up, spiritual energy, good energy, and then not just chaotic random energy, but focused. And then grab it and use it, because it takes a lot of energy to turn ourselves around and to stop day by day by day wishing that things were different than what they are, because it never works. It simply never works. I didn't look this up. I meant to, and I didn't. But Lakshmi reminded me the other day, there was a beautiful, Patanjali said something. And basically, this was when I was giving that talk on hurt feelings. I remember it because it's the only talk I gave from my home in the community. And I remember the quote being right there. But Patanjali basically said, because it was about hurt feelings, everybody in your life is going to hurt you. he was saying, why wait for that to not be the case? It could sound a little crass or harsh for people, but it's absolutely the truth. There's no way that they can't. It's virtually impossible, because it's only in that place of that utterly pure love of the divine that we will feel not hurt or not needing. Or this summer, when I was driving back from Los Angeles on one of my trips, I got into this mindset. I let it go on for a couple of days before I realized what it was. But I think I might have shared this with you or many since then. I got into the mindset that I would really love it if, when I came home between one of those trips down south, that was absolutely, utterly, purely about serving everyone else. I mean, to the max. It made anything else I've done not look like serving. And I thought, if I could just come home and really relax and have somebody make me a delicious meal and serve it to me with extraordinary loving kindness. Now, I know there are many people who would cook me a meal if I asked. I know that. But here's what allowed me to tune into, I was looking for something impossible. There was nobody I could think of who could do that for me the way I wanted it to be done. Isn't that, I mean, it was so subtle. It was like, if I could just have that, I would feel so good and so well loved. And then, of all of the people I know, some of you included, who would in a heartbeat cook for me tomorrow if I asked for that. Many of you did. I came home after all that. I needed surgery. Barry and I were fed for a month. And with so much love, it was extraordinary. But I wanted something deeply. I was longing for it. Where is there pure, loving love? And that purity, that we're always looking for, that which we frequently find ourselves depending on others for, it doesn't exist. We can't do it. And we get pretty darn close. And this is, I mean, many of us have said it, this is how we get fooled. We get so close that we think if we just work it out, we'll get it. No. I mean, it's not sad. It sounds sad, but it's not sad. There's so much greatness in this world. I told you, I used to think to myself when I first really got onto a path, I mean, really dived deep. This was in my very late 20s. And I would say to my husband, why is everybody trying not to come back again? Life is so great. I wanted to come back. I mean, it's what I felt. It was being a pretty good life. There's so much here, but there's not that here. And no matter how close we get to an approximation of it, we will find more and more and more time in our lives where we love and appreciate what we have, the friendships, the family, the generosity of so many great souls. I mean, there's so much here. Many of us have been given so much, and that's true. Yet still, we have that, I can't remember now which saint said what, but whoever said, we have a God-shaped hole in our heart. And there's nothing but our relationship with God. There's nothing but finding that place, as Swamiji said, that resonates perfectly, the perfect resonance that's ever going to satisfy it. It's a beautiful reading. We're all doing our best to go there. It's absolutely clear to me that at each step along the way, God Himself comes to us and He gives us just as much as He knows we can receive, and there's never any judgment on His part, ever. And we're all on the same path, and we're just doing the very best we can. So it's never about criticizing ourselves or finding fault with the ways that we're not there yet, because until we're there, we're not there. I was saying to another friend, just yesterday we were meeting, we were talking about growing and being able to share these teachings or understand these teachings, and he was just telling me that he just had this wonderful time of self-realization. I mean, in the way that he had it, he learned a lot about himself, and he felt uplifted and expansive. And I was telling him that I was reflecting on my own version of that, and I said, every once in a while I think I should go back, and everything that's more than 2 years old I should take off the internet, because it can be so embarrassing. It's like, where was my head when I said that? Well, it wasn't here. I'm only here now. And 2 years from now, I imagine I'll be looking and saying, oh, I could have said that so much different or better or whatever, because the closer to God we get, that's just simply the truth. So it's inherent in this teaching on learning to be dependent on God for all that we need, that we not be hard on ourselves, that we love ourselves just the way God does, who understands that we're souls making our way back to Him, going through all of those stages in the festival that some of us are studying about right now. But first we revolt, then we start looking, then we're redeemed. But wherever we are, we just listen to these beautiful teachings again and say, okay, I'll make even a greater effort to do those things, those behaviors, practice the techniques on our path, spend time with other soul-seeking people, add 5 minutes to our meditation. When you think you're done meditating, add 5 minutes. Tell God, I'm doing this out of pure love for you. I want to be closer to you, so I'll sit for 5 more minutes. People say to me all the time, how do we open our hearts? How do we practice devotion? Offer as much as you can remember to offer to God. Invite Him to take your hand and go with you everywhere. Sit 5 minutes longer. Sing a chant for God alone. Make sure you sit with your heart open. And in this way, we have those experiences and we go, that was it. That was that. It was a moment of bliss. I'm going to come back there again and again. I will be dependent on my Divine Mother. I will be dependent on these masters alone. Doesn't mean we don't love each other and that we don't share, but we don't live with expectations that anybody else is here to help us feel whole. No, it doesn't work. So we have the great blessing of knowing about these great souls, and we just keep turning to them. So just wait till I can see you all. See if there are any comments or questions. Anybody have any experiences to relate or thoughts? Doesn't have to be a question. Letty? Letty's the best audience person in the world. I love this about her. Her mind is always filled with enthusiasm and contributions. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you, Shanti. This was a great talk, and I feel it even feels like a couple's class, because the times that I've felt the closest to God, I'm embarrassed to say, is when I've been angry at the one I love, or I feel like I've misunderstood, and I go into my meditation and I tell Divine Mother, I want only Thee. But it's always suffering that leads me to Divine Mother, and I feel like it's a blessing, because it's helping me realize that I shouldn't just be seeking Divine Mother because I'm suffering. I should be seeking her because I always want that voice.
Yeah. If I took the, I love what you're saying, Letty, there's so much to it. I would take the shoulds out. I shouldn't, or I should. I'd be a little easier on myself. And you know, I just say to you, it's wonderful if we were in ecstatic joy and from that place embracing God in whatever form. Most of us are learning spiritually, most of us, through suffering. We don't want to keep doing that, but over and over we learn that this world, I mean, again, all of you know I'm not this dark, negative person, but the world's filled with suffering. Even for those of us who are as blessed as we are, we suffer, or we're just on the edge of it, and we can see that we're about to let ourselves suffer, and we make a different choice, which is in part what you do when you head to the meditation room or space, when you're angry or upset and feeling that lonely, because that's what happens then. When the person or people that you love the most in your mind have let you down, it's such a lonely feeling. It's never the truth, by the way. It's never really their fault, ever. That should be something else. David's shaking his head, yes, he really wants us to. But I knew you were going to agree with me, David.
I was just thinking that for me, it's I try and let go of anything that bring my emotions to an extreme, whether it be on an angry side, jealousy, or anything like that, or even on the opposite side. And I always, my grandchildren bring me so much joy, and it's they're just so, if they were edible, they wouldn't be here anymore, because I just eat them up. But that feeling that I get, I even try to let that joy go and know that is temporary, and that it is a gift from God. It is the gift, but not the giver. And I think that's what that codependency on all those extreme feelings, not just the good, not just the bad, but also
You're right.
everything that makes me feel.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. That's beautifully said, and it's absolutely the truth. Is that even that joy, and I love that you reminded us, it's the gift, it's not the giver, and it's the giver that we want to connect with. So, yeah, that's really wonderful. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, Shanti, this is Vani. I'm trying to um, think between the dependency versus detachment, okay? Because one of the things that I'm finding is I'm not as much dependent on others, but I find it more difficult to detach, you know? Like especially I think as in James was talking about grandchildren, that is what I'm finding it hard. It's more of a like attachment. I mean, at the end of the day, my focus is I want to be truly attached to God. And then the other things is because in this life I have a role to play, and I do want to play that role to the best of my ability, but not get so attached to the outcome or anything. And that is where I find it difficult to do when it comes to small children. I think I'm better with the bigger people because I feel they can take care of themselves, I guess. But it's the small children. So how do you see the dependency versus detachment in that angle?
In one way, in one way it's a fine line. Because what makes us feel attached anywhere? We're attached when we want something from that relationship. You're not attached any place that you're not looking to engage, really. You can't be. So that practice of loving without the thought, it's the definition of Nishkam Karma. It's really what it is. I will, first of all, to let go more and more as you can of the I, because the I gets you into trouble. So when you say, as much as possible, I will let God serve these grandchildren through me. And so it's not you doing it. And the more you can practice that, because as long as it's us, it's ego. And the ego, whether we call it attachment, there's a little bit of a difference, but it's almost splitting hairs for right now, because it's not far enough away from dependence for most of us to try and get that degree of clarity. As long as we're moving with our ego, I do this, they give me this, so it's me and them, there's going to be attachment and dependence. And the more that we can practice, that we give what we give, because it's a joy to allow that divine energy to flow through us, not because we expect anything in return. And I want to just say, it's not easy. I mean, any one of us, if we had the opportunity, could share the next story and the next. I'm going through it with my grandchildren right now. I was totally with them for 4 months. I was the mother, the nurse, the doctor, the caregiver. And when my son-in-law died, my daughter-in-law just wrapped her up in their arms, locked that house, won't even let me come down to visit. And just doesn't call. It's pretty remarkable. On a dime. It turned on a dime. And I've gone through stages of a kind of grief. Fortunately, I've gone through it pretty quickly, but my God, where did they go? And I was angry with my daughter-in-law for a while, and then I'd get beyond it, and then it would come back until I realized it was a moment. It was God's moment. I was meant to give that. I wasn't giving it. God jumped in and served them through me. And if you all remember, I was experiencing pure grace in a moment of life that was so painful in the world, because when God flows through us, that's what we feel. But the minute I thought it was, look at what I did, look at all I gave, how can she? then it starts getting painful. It goes from the ecstasy to the agony. It's so we have to get ourselves out of the way. And we're human beings, so we're going to slip, and we're going to get in there, and then we have to go, wait a minute, this is not how I live. No, it's not me. It's always you, always you. And we remind ourselves, and we find that we can remind ourselves sooner and sooner. Then we're not even going there as much, as often. But when we quit doing that altogether, we leave this body. So we're doing our best, but that's the most important thing. They are not yours. You are not taking care of them. It's not you. It's not your energy. It's God. It's Divine Mother. They've been given the gift of having Divine Mother come to them through you. And that should be your mantra. And if that's your mantra, then soon it becomes truth for you. That's actually what mantras are for. Yeah. Anybody else?
I just wanted to close with something I heard your Pada. I was listening to a talk he gave, and he said, do your best, give it to God, and be free. He said, Master said that. He said, do your best, give it to God, and be free. Do your work as a servant to God and give Him the responsibility.
Yeah, do your best, give it to God, and be free. So there you have it in about 8 words, what it took me 10 minutes to say. That's masterful. Thank you, Eloise. That was beautiful. All right, everybody, good night, great souls.